Hi, Democrats. Today is Wednesday, March 2nd. I think it's Wednesday, March 2nd, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Wednesday. I have to tell you, my days are kind of blurred, with the State of the Union address yesterday, all of the news from last week, the beginning of Women's History Month, the end of the acknowledgement of Black History Month. There's just been a lot to cover. So let's jump right in. So the State of the Union address was yesterday, and I am sure that if you're watching me, you were watching Wrapped last night, and you heard that an adult is at the helm again. It was so great to watch a president who recognizes that he's the president for the entire United States and not just the few, and not just for the people who voted for him, although he's the president who has received the most amount of votes ever in history. But there were folks who didn't vote for him, but he called for unity. And as I watched the speech, there was this swell of pride that there were moments in that speech where legislative members on both sides stood up and clapped and gave him a standing ovation. That hopefully signals that we're on our way to unity, because that's what we need as a country. But before I get into all of that, I do want to take a minute and pause and acknowledge the history that was made last night. For the first time in history, the president of the United States was flanked by two females, the female Speaker of the House and a female vice president. And that female vice president was also of African American descent and Indian descent. Do not want to diminish East Asian descent. Do not want to diminish any part of who she is. That was history. It was wonderful to watch, and it was also wonderful to watch a president who has command of the job that he has. There have been difficult moments. There will continue to be difficult moments because it's presidenting. And if we only focus on this little piece, I think that's how America has gotten so divided. Everybody focuses on their little piece, and we're not talking about the whole pie. Last night, the president talked about the whole pie. The president talked about unity, and he talked about what he's going to do for our pocketbook issues. All the pundits want to talk about our pocketbook issues, and so let's talk about it. He talked about that he's going to release some of the reserves oil that we have that will reduce gas prices directly. He talked about how American companies need to buy American and build American. That is how you reduce costs, and that's how we free the way to raise minimum wage and raise what we are paying the actual people who are doing the work, and that is important. He talked about reducing childcare expense and reducing prescription drug expense. These are the things that affect our day-to-day pocket for everyday Americans, and we have a president who is focused on that. None of this fighting Republican Democrat nonsense. I didn't hear that from our president. We heard it from the other side of the aisle. The two most immature people to ever be elected to serve in Congress were there heckling the president as if they were in junior high. But that I was proud of our president for not acknowledging it, not dealing with it, because we have bigger fish to fry. We have to take care of our veterans, and we have to do what we can to address this record inflation. We're going to beat the opioid crisis. We're going to take the steps to make sure that there's better mental health care and greater access to it, support our veterans, and end cancer as we know it. Those are the things that affect you, that affect me, and that's what we needed to be talking about. And it was such a great speech, and it was so uniting that the other side agreed. They stood and applauded. We are on our way to unity, and that's where we need to be. And I'm glad that we came through the last 5 dark years, and we are on our way to mend. I appreciate that the president acknowledged the crisis in Ukraine. But he also acknowledged, and rightfully so, making sure that we know the steps that he, along with our allies, are taking to make sure that this is a short-lived crisis. So, I mean, yesterday, all in all, was a great day. Now, I want to bring it back locally and say that there are a lot of bills being rushed through our state legislature that are being presented on the floor as, while they're still shell legislation. So they don't even have all the words, and they're trying to get members to vote without all the words in the bills. We can't take our eye off for a second because they will try and rush through. And as I watched the speech last night and the things that our president is talking about enacting, and I harken back to what's happening in our state, and a lot of the things, reducing childcare costs, taking care of our veterans, reducing prescription drug costs. There are actually bills in our state legislation that goes against that. Good thing we're part of the entire United States, and we'll still get the benefit even if our legislators insist on putting up performative legislation and voting for unconstitutional bills and bills that go against what is happening on a federal level. And then, okay, so I do want to address some of the comments. This is, how do we know if Republicans in our party aren't exactly like the other Republicans? Let's be clear. If they're in our party, they're Democrats. And I come here every day, and I am out in the world every day working to convince people that Democrats deliver and that Democrats care, and that the Republican Party has gotten so caught up in Trumpism and so caught up in just being in leadership that they are no longer looking out for what is good for their constituents. And so when someone who is a registered Republican, registered Libertarian, registered Independent decides to join our team, I welcome them, and I'm glad, because it seems like the work that we're doing isn't wasted. So I won't be deterred. And I encourage everyone, if you feel like someone isn't living up to our values, help them by educating them on what our values are. Help them by educating on what it is that you need to hear in order to be able to vote for them. If we're talking about someone who is running for office, or if we're talking about somebody who's coming to the meetings, encourage them, let them know what our message is. Make sure they're in line with our message and that we're living our values. We are the big tent party. And so we have moderate Democrats, and we have our uber progressive friends and neighbors. All of them are welcome. That's how we deliver, because we're speaking to everyone. So that's what I have to say to that. I want to thank everybody who joined me. Ask for prayers for things that are going on in my personal life, and hope that you join me tomorrow at 4:15. And you guys have a great one.